Hello and welcome to my hobby bench. So today's video is the fourth and final episode of the OS FS-123 pumped engine series, or I guess it was a series. I didn't know that it was going to be a series, but anyway, experiment with the engine that Chris from Perky Plains RC has provided to me to play with, try and see if I can get a remedy on. And you've probably seen by now the first three videos because I release them in pretty rapid succession. So here's the thing with videos, and allow me to sit here and talk for just a minute or two about that before I get into showing you what the final verdict is. So the thing with when I shoot videos like this in a series, I may end up shooting almost the entire series really quickly, because as I find new information, I'll shoot a separate video on that. Not always, but sometimes. So like the first two videos in that series were all shot the same day. The third one was shot the next day, and this one is shot on the next day. So the funny thing is, it's funny because when I post a video, sometimes it may be days before I even get around to getting the video posted, and when you comment on these videos, I'm already like 3 steps ahead of where you just watched. So either it's already finally resolved or it's done. So that's kind of how it works. So it's funny because everybody will be oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And it's like, well, I've already done those things. You just haven't seen them yet because I haven't gotten around to posting the video. So just keep that in mind when you're seeing me do a series of videos. Chances are by the time you're watching the video and commenting on it, I'm 3 steps ahead of that. So just so you know. Anyway, that's why I get a chuckle out of some of these comments, because it's like, dude, I'm there, been past that already, whatever. So here it is. This is the final video, and it's taking place indoors because what I have done was play with this regulator quite a bit. And I might actually do one more video where I actually take this regulator apart just to show you the internals. That wasn't the intention of this video. So let's throw it to the table now. Let me turn this camera on up here first. Throw it to the table now, and I'll explain to you what I found. Rolling. So now we're rolling. Now we can shut this camera off. Okay, so here on the table is Chris's 123. Now, like I said, I have taken this regulator off and taken apart and cleaned it 4 or 5 times at this point. And I did several of those up here, but the only way for me to tell if it was really sealed and working was take it back downstairs, or if I had a fuel tank up here, which I didn't, take it back down to the garage, put it on the stand, put a prop on it, and prime it. Do the priming, the engine prime thing, because the last video was showing that it simply wasn't going to run because there was just such a massive leak. So this, I'm going to zoom in right now so you can kind of hopefully see some of this. So this regulator, and like I said, I may do a video where I take this apart again and just show you the inside. This black plastic part here is a sandwich. So the metal part here is the base, and the plastic thing you see here that looks like one piece is actually 2 pieces. It's a sandwich, and the diaphragm resides between those 2 pieces of the sandwich. And the only parts that are inside here, so the other thing is I contacted when I'm in doubt about something and I have questions, I contact my friend Harvey, because he's been doing this so much longer than I have, and he knows everything. So when I have an issue, I don't ask you guys that watch this channel, I go ask Harvey, because he knows. So I did speak to him today, and I'll get more to about what he told me about there. But anyway, so the issue is this regulator. There's the sandwich there, there's a diaphragm. I had that apart, looked at it several times, and it's perfect. Everything looks wonderful. Until I finally discovered where it was actually leaking from. Here you can kind of see the parting line between those 2 sandwich pieces. I wasn't sure if it was actually leaking from the bottom black piece to the hard part, to the metal, or in between the sandwich. And it's in between the sandwich. So I'm hoping that I can get this zoomed in close enough so you can actually watch this. Here's why it's leaking. I'm pushing. If you just push on this
I can see oil coming out of it, like the cover got somehow warped. And it's just not sitting flush anymore. So I had it doing that. Let me flip it over on this side. Maybe you can see it on this side. I don't know. So that's where it's leaking from. It's leaking between that sandwich, and I've loosened and tightened and, you know, done all the iterations there. There is no gasket that goes in between there. Trying to seal that with Permatex, if you saw the inside of this, would be futile at best, because I don't think Permatex would permanently seal it. It would probably dissolve over time anyway. So here's the funny thing with this is when you go and look on the parts breakdown of this engine on its manual, they have a listing for this cover. They have a part number for that cover. So that is the only part of this whole carb, or this regulator part, regulator portion of the carb that's replaceable. Is just the upper cover. So what does that tell you? To me, that tells me that they knew it needs to be replaced periodically. So I did not actually go and try to find just the cover. I was doing a search specifically for the carb, because Harvey's told me you need a new carb. And he's probably right on that, even though I think you could get a cover here. But say you buy the cover and your diaphragm, even though the diaphragm looks beautiful, I mean, who's to say that cover isn't going to want to match up and mesh with the lower black piece? Because I was looking at this under a headlight magnifier, and I didn't see any blemishes or anything that would cause it to leak, but it sure as hell does. And like I said, I thought maybe if these two screws were over tightened, it might cause that bowing, but I've loosened them up also, and I don't understand it. So anyway, that's where it's leaking from. So what I have done, let me zoom out a bit now, is I looked on RC Japan. And RC Japan actually does sell a replacement carb. I mean, they do. And I didn't look to see if they have just a cover, because when you buy something from RC Japan, it could take 4 weeks to get. And when you order something from them, it's a two-step process. Basically, you add it to your cart and you say, I want this, but you have to have a login and an account. And then they send you an email saying, okay, we've put this in your account or your cart and we have it, or here's the stock status, do you want it or no? And then you say, yes, I want it. And then they place the order. So I placed an order for a new carb, which was 9,372 yen, I believe, which turns out to be about $63. If you look for this carb on Horizon Hobby, which they do sell, still, this is still available. I looked on her. It's $141 for the carb. Now, granted, there may be some small import tax or something. Hopefully, there's not a tariff involved. I'll find out before I actually place the order. But $63 is a hell of a lot cheaper than $141. So I had offered Chris a swap trade deal basically for this, which is the original OS FS-120 Surpass E that's not pumped. It's the old classic, beautiful, reliable, unbelievable. And this is a new engine. It's never been run. It doesn't have a box, but it's a new engine. I offered to trade him that for this engine, just because, first of all, I have no immediate plans for this. I've got a Sato 120 if I ever need to fly with a 120. Yeah, I did want to do some runs with that engine, but, you know, that's all by the wayside. So I am seriously considering, you know, doing a trade with him and maybe seeing if there's some little thing about the offsetting of the $63 carb thing, because I don't want to, I'd rather be a straight trade and me not being whole. But, you know, I don't know what Chris paid for the engine and the airplane and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I am seriously considering, because I believe, and Chris is of the opinion that this was a very low time engine when he got it on that Stinson, that it was one of those things where the fellow or whoever had it bought it, put it on there, may have run it like 2 or 3 break-in runs, and then it sat for years. So essentially this is a new engine. Now why the cover would leak, maybe it's just a factor of time.
But the other thing is, when OS developed this, they did this same carb on the 91 Surpass 2, and of course they didn't keep doing this. They didn't keep this pump for long, so maybe that was just the reason that there was issues with it. But I was very easy for me to see when I had my magnifier on in my face down there that if I pushed on this, I could see whatever remnants of fuel or oil that were in here. I could see them pushing out of that crack. So I was like, and I put it on the stand and you know, turned it over, and it was just just pouring out of there. So that either the cover needs to be replaced, which, like I said, I didn't look to see if that was all that would be done, but I figure if I'm going to do a swap and have this engine, I'm not going to just bank on the cover being the fix. I'm going to go ahead and get the entire carb. That way I have spare parts, at least, you know, throttle arm, high-speed needle, whatever. Some small parts that wouldn't be here. And who knows, maybe the diaphragm is fine, and maybe the lower piece is fine, so I would have spare parts for that regulator too. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at with this little engine video series. That's Chris and I are working on some final details here of this potential engine swap. So if that happens, and when I get the carb, I'll be showing more videos of this engine running. The other thing that Harvey suggested I do, which might be interesting, but I'm not going to do now if Chris is going to get this engine, is just fit this carb on here. Now it may or may not bolt directly up. It might bolt directly up there. The screws look like they might be the same width apart. I don't know, but now it's kind of pointless to do that. I don't want to use parts on that engine if that's what's going to be given to Chris, traded to Chris. Plus, there's no point in it, because sure, you could say, yeah, that'll work, but then the carb for a Surpass E is probably much harder to find than this one, because this one's still available in several locations. The Surpass E carb is not. So anyway, that's how we're ending this series at this time. But like I said, I might, if this becomes mine and I get that carb, I will be doing a video showing you just how, you know, take this thing apart and show you the internal components and all that kind of stuff. So that will be a video in and of itself. So anyway, that's all I got for now. Thank you for watching.